The Rise of Skywalker is often described as a Star Wars movie that's going to have a lot of revelations that will lead to saga-wide implications, as well as introducing new types of Star Wars lore than we have already seen in, of course, Star Wars Legends and the actual canon material that falls under Disney by creating something new and original. This is Mike Zero. Make sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel for future Star Wars content. So the one thing about Episode 9 that a lot of people are very curious about is, of course, how the Star Wars lore is going to be utilized in this movie by JJ, Chris Terrio, and even creator George Lucas. Let's not forget that George is actually heavily attached to this movie. He worked a lot during the rewrites of Episode 9 during the final months of 2018. So with that being said, we do know that Episode 9 has a lot going for it when it comes to many of the legacy characters. Now, what's really intriguing is that these past couple of weeks or so, we've been learning a whole lot more about this film, and when it all comes down to one of the concept art descriptions, this is where things begin to get very intense for Episode 9, involving Vader and the Dark Acolytes. Now, specifically, what's really intriguing about all of this is that a description of concept art of around 9 Dark Acolytes, wielding lightsaber hilts and all standing around a large Darth Vader statue, and bowing down to the structure where it's described that they are performing some kind of ritual for Vader. It's said that each Dark Acolyte, of course, are wearing devices around their necks, where one of the sequences is said to involve all of the Acolytes placing their hands on Vader's charred armor, and specifically on his chest plate. They are said to all be saying the words of the ancient Sith code that has to do with the beyond of where the Acolytes live, where the scene is dubbed as Vader's Resurrection. It's said that it was the Dark Acolytes who created the hybrid Force ghost of Darth Vader, where a part of Vader's spirit was able to live on and interact with the mortal world, however does not have the ability to take over any of the Acolytes' bodies. It's said that this sequence sets up that the resurrection of Vader and introducing his spirit was a failed attempt of gaining a great Sith power, that eventually one of the Dark Acolytes is able to revive Palpatine's spirit into the mortal world, and fulfill and willingly allows himself to be possessed, where Palpatine is the successful trial of possession. So let's go over a couple of parts about this. Now, we do know that the resurrection of Vader was a big rumor for Star Wars The Force Awakens way back in early 2014. I don't know if you guys recall this, but way back in 2014, we heard a lot of rumors about the Dark Acolytes and the resurrection of Vader to a certain extent, which never made it to the final cut of that movie. So you can already see how JJ is saving a lot of his ideas from Episode 7 all the way up until Episode 9 now. So this resurrection seems to be a very unique and original type of resurrection, and that is, of course, reviving the spirit of Darth Vader and bringing him back into the mortal world. At least a partial part of his spirit where he's able to interact with the mortal world, but not necessarily able to take over one's body. Unlike the Palpatine spirit that one of the Dark Acolytes allowed to make its way into the mortal world, where one of the Dark Acolytes are taken over by Palpatine's spirit. So basically, Darth Vader's, resurrection is a failed attempt at doing exactly what happens between the Dark Acolyte and, of course, the spirit of Sidious. And that's exactly why there's going to be a hybrid Force ghost of Anakin that appears before dark side users or any Force-sensitive individuals that have a shred of darkness within them, including Rey. So we do know that the hybrid Force ghost is going to be quite a very interesting piece of Episode 9. It is yet another piece of Episode 7 that never made it to the final cut that J.J. Abrams is bringing back into full swing here for Episode 9. So the Dark Acolytes performing this ritual where they're all standing around the iconic Vader statue, where the Vader charred armor is said to lie just below the statue, where the Acolytes place all of their hands on top of the chest plate while wearing these devices around their necks. Now, this most likely is the same exact device that we just went over a couple of hours ago, actually, that Palpatine was wearing just before his death at the very end of Return of the Jedi. That's going to be explained by Sidious within the third act of this movie. So we do know that this film is going to have a lot of revelations just like this. It's going to make us go wow and look back at the originals and the prequels in a different light, and even The Force Awakens in a different way, right? We do know that J.J. Abrams is trying to be a visionary when it comes to The Rise of Skywalker, and he's he's really trying his very best to aim high and to be very goal-driven and ambitious to create all these new different pieces of Star Wars lore that the fans have never seen before on the big screen, that's going to literally change how we view the franchise. Now, there's a lot of mixed reactions on spirits being involved, especially in the form of Sith, and whether or not it's really the best direction to go for Star Wars Episode 9. We do know that there was an idea for The Last Jedi that never made it to the final cut, where Luke would be visited by a Sith ghost at some point in time inside of his hut. That also never made it to the final cut, and that's also where the inspiration really came from for Abrams, Chris Terrio, etc., to put that into Episode 9. And we also know that George Lucas was the one who really came up with the idea of exactly how Palpatine would come back in this movie. Anyways, guys, drop a comment below. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comments. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, do make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.